And I want to let you know that if you are interested in a certificate of attendance, we are happy to provide you with the certificate for your participating in this 1 hour webinar. Just email us at calpro@air.org to request the certificate. And now to our topic, which is finish strong and start even stronger. We are very fortunate to have Steve Curiel, who is the director of Huntington Beach Adult School, and Jamie Nash, who is the director of Tamalpais Adult School, leading the discussion today on this topic. I'm going to stop sharing my screen right now as they're going to be leading us in the presentation, but I just want to tell you a little bit about each of them. So Steve Curiel has over 20 years in adult education, working both as a teacher and an administrator, and has overseen program areas in that time across all programs. His school serves about 7,000 students each year, and he's very active in professional organizations such as CCAE, CAIA, and the California Consortium for Independent Study. In 2016, he was awarded the Administrator of the Year in Adult Education from ACSA. And currently, he's the CAIA Vice President of Legislative Affairs. Jamie Nash, who will be our first presenter today, is the Director of Tamalpais Adult School, and she's been an educator for over 25 years. She serves as the director of a small adult school in Marin County, just north of San Francisco. Tamalpais Adult School serves about 500 students each year in the ESL, GED, high school diploma, and home care aid. Additionally, she's a member at large of the CAIA board and serves as a facilitator for the statewide SB 68 Action Group, which is comprised of adult schools, community colleges, Cal States, and UCs, with the goal of ensuring greater success and access to higher education for undocumented learners. And with that, Jamie, I will turn it over to you to begin your presentation.
All right, everybody, it's good to be here, and thank you for having both Steve and I here. This is actually a really fun topic to discuss. And so I'm going to share my screen and get started. Let's see here. All right, so I get to start with finishing strong, and this is, of course, the perfect time of year where we're all focused on that, probably starting in May. A lot of us got started on, what we needed to do to finish strong. And so what I want to do is just let you know that there's so many different ways actually to finish strong. And I'm giving you my perspective. And I think what's important to just note is that our adult school here in Marin County is real small. You just heard that Steve's was, serving 7,000 students. Well, we're micro. We serve about 600 every year, and that's pre-COVID. So some of the needs that you might have or to finish strong, or the look, is going to be a little different than what you're hearing from today. But it's great to be able to present this topic and to kind of consider, what it really means, because I think when it comes to adult education, it's really important that we do have strong programs and strong voices, because we all know that, we're our best advocates when it comes to adult education, at least in educational settings. So what we're going to talk about, I just did a little bit of defining what a finish strong looks like. It's really going to be different for different folks. Hopefully we'll get to hear a little bit from you about some of your strategies and how you what your finish strong looks like. Discussing wellness and self-care is absolutely a part of finishing strong, and especially in these past, well, really frankly, week, but also the prior, 2.5, 3 years, been a tough time. And then just, what do you, I'll go over a little bit about what I'm working on at the end of the year as a small school, and, what I need to get done while just being prepared for all kinds of things that I wasn't preparing for, which is just part of the job and part of adult ed. What I'm not going to do is sugarcoat these challenging years that we've had. I'm not going to be talking about any silver linings of COVID right now. Still feeling it pretty heavily here and just with our students. It's still very challenging. I'm excited to hear about what your Finish Strong looks like, and also, not assuming that your needs and our needs are the same. So our Finish Strongs will look different. I'm definitely not going to be talking about end of year tasks, but I am going to share a little bit about what we're focusing on at Tam Adult School. So a couple things that I carry around with me at all times as a leader of our school and just working in the adult education field are, these three areas. How do I always remember the good and the impact that we do, even when times are really tough, like right now? Even sometimes when the impact feels smaller than it has in other years. How do I walk around and ensure that that our good things that we're doing in the community are being talked about or considered? How do I recognize our staff and our student? We know that in education, people aren't recognized enough for all the good that they do, no matter what their role is. But I think in adult education, we're oftentimes sort of put over here or sidelined a little bit. And so I think, to me, it's even more important to figure out, well, how can I amplify the voices of our adult school, of the amazing staff, no matter their role that we have here. And so that's sort of what I walk around thinking about a lot. And it's certainly part of our Finish Strong. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those. So I know a lot of you probably do end of year certificates or mid-year certificates. And we do that too. This is a really significant year for us, and at Tam Adult School, we're 90 years old this year. That is a super big deal, and something that we're proud of. And so, we've put that on the logo on everything that we can, because I want to promote that whenever I can. And that's part of the Finish Strong for us, is really just saying, hey, Marin, we've been in this community for 90 years, servicing students, providing programs for free for a really long time. This particular student, Andy, was awesome. It was funny because I was just going back and forth a little bit with my staff, going, they thought that maybe students weren't really going to care about the attendance certificate. And I was like, well, we're just going to do it anyway. And this particular student discussed with our paraeducator right after he got it. He said, I've never gotten anything like this in my life, and I'm just so proud to have it. And it was just a pivotal moment for our paraeducator to be like, wow, okay. And then Andy went on to say that he, his English classes brought him so much confidence in his work. He's moved up in his job, all the things that we want for students, we see. So I brought him up for a reason, and it makes me feel really good to know that that this little effort wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal to him. Hopefully some of you here today have also nominated one of your adult education students for the Student Success Program. It's something that happens sometime, between January and April. And there is a little bit of an application process to do, but it's important to do. It's getting your students recognized. This happens to be a graduate from a few years ago, Isela, who was just accepted and will be recognized by the state, which is wonderful. So they're sending a certificate to me, and she's going to be a graduation speaker at our graduation this year. And I'm going to be presenting that certificate to her in front of her community, in front of our board, in front of her family, her kids, and also of our graduates. And I will say that this particular student, who I've done a lot of kind of sharing with on our district level, has also been the recipient of quite a few awards this year. She's amazing. She's in the STEM program at our local community college, College of Marin. She'll be heading to Stanford this summer to do an internship. She's incredible. And she's also very outspoken about education and how to better serve students that are underserved, and really how to do better outreach. So it's wonderful. So this is for sure part of our Finish Strong, and I'm really proud of her. Then recognizing some of our staff, we had 2 staff recognized this year for the Golden Bell. Again, this is one of those applications where you're like, where am I going to find the time to do it? I'm tired. I've got to do WASC. I've got to do SIP. I've got to do like 5 other things. But it's important that some of your amazing employees get recognized. And so Yaz Peters here is one of our secretaries, and she's just incredible. And also one of our home care aide teachers was recognized as well. And there was, of course, a ceremony this year for them that brought all the county leaders together, and they were in person, which was real nice. Then another just gesture for just making sure that I'm thanking staff and I'm recognizing staff during Staff Appreciation Week. I just wrote a personal note to every staff member, because for me, part of finishing strong and being a strong leader is recognizing the amazing people that you have on your staff. And like I said, it really doesn't matter the role here at the adult school. I just have some incredible people, and we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today if we didn't have an amazing staff. But they need to hear it, right? It's important that they hear from us. So what I wanted to do for a sec here is just to hear from you. If you felt like putting in the chat, have you been recognized? How is recognition happening at your school among students and staff? And I was hoping I could read that out, but I don't see where it is. So I'm not sure I can do that. Or if you'd like, you can unmute. So if there's something special that you do at your school that you wanted to just talk about for a sec, I'd love to hear about how you recognize staff and students and their accomplishments at your site. Is there one brave person out there? Let's see. Okay, and I'm seeing some stuff in the chat, which is great. We sent certificates who made gains. That's wonderful. Recognizing students for attendance and leveling up. That's great. Okay, good. Great. Any other last thoughts on that? Because if not, I'm gonna keep us moving if I can. Let's see. Here we go. So again, just remembering that I walk around with these three things on my mind a lot. So one of the things that I'm going to thank Steve for this is that, again, we're 90 years old this year, so that's a big deal. But really, every year we all see this. Steve, either CCAE or the CAIA board, they send around, here's a template that you can use for a resolution so that your board recognizes the work that you've done. Some years I've done it, some years I haven't. This is one year where I decided to do that. And I was really very thankful to Steve because he really put this out for all of us to use, and it wasn't a big deal to redo and to make it TAM adult school specific. And our superintendent read it at our board meeting. And again, 90 years is a big deal. So they were very happy to do this for us. And again, this gets the word out about the good work that adult schools are doing, both in California, but also locally here in Marin. And then I don't know what you guys do to honor grads, but we usually post their pictures and their comments and their words of wisdom around our office. So we have quite a few of these around. This was one of my favorite students from a couple of years ago who worked so incredibly hard to finish. You know, there were days where I didn't think she was going to do it. So our students come by, especially new students, and they read these bios and they relate to them. It makes sense to them. And so in normal years during graduation, we plaster and post them all over our building, and families come in and look at all of them. So that's been a little difficult with COVID, but it's still part of our Finish Strong and something that we think is really important. Plus, when people come into our building, whether they're going into ESL or whether they're here for tech, because we share our office with technology, they're seeing this information, they're learning about our programs just from what we have on the walls. So I'm going to skip this here. So one of the other things that I think is really important for us is sharing our school-wide data. Now, I'm just going to humbly show you our data. We're a very small adult school, so our learning payment points information is probably quite a bit smaller than some of the schools out there. But I share a lot. This is something that I share with staff, and it's something that all of us who are leaders right now in our WIOA agencies are really looking at, because as we close this year, this is really important. What do our learning gains look like? Did we do better than in prior years? What do we think our payment point summaries are going to look like? How does that translate into funding? These are all things that we have to think about and that define, you know, what we're going to be offering in some ways next year as well. And so one of the things just briefly that I'm sharing is, our learning gains, our attendance is coming up from this horrible, horrible year of last year where we were remote only. Our learning gains are coming back and are stronger. Our attendance is stronger, and we want to get back to this year, but you'll see that, the crawl back is real. Like, it's taken a while. So it's really looking at your school data and making sense of it, and then engaging your staff and your district or your SOUP in that information so that they understand, what it's been like. These have been hard times. So moving on. So then, just like anything, important to kind of think like, okay, yeah, the way we implemented that HyFlex, that was tough. That didn't work great. Or, oh my gosh, it was amazing. So really looking at, what worked well, not beating yourself up when something kind of flopped, because that's part of learning, and not trying to strive for perfection, because that's impossible. And I think, just having a growth mindset when it comes to learning and reworking your programs as needed, because the ultimate goal is we're supporting students, especially in my community where students are very highly underserved, at least in higher ed and in secondary. So the other thing that I'd love to hear from you guys is, one of the things in adult ed is we're often in an island unto ourselves. Our districts aren't our primary support providers. It's often each other, people from outside of our district. So when you think about those colleagues and mentors that really you can call or you can text and they're going to pick up or answer you, who are those people? What do they provide for you? It's important to have at least a handful, that you can call if there's trouble, or if there's a question, or if you're noticing a trend. Because sometimes even in our own districts, there's no one I can call. I got to get on the phone with adult educators if I want to know something about adult schools. It's not the same way in our high school program here. In our district, or our high school district, they can call each other. But if I need something that's adult ed oriented, I got to go all over the place. I got to call my top 5. And then, of course, why are you here? What's your why? And I know it's WHY, but I save space. But why are you here? At the end of the day, what's your impact? And that's important to fall back on, especially when things are tough. And then I already talked a little bit about growth mindset. Now, I'm not going to show this, but if some of you were at the CCAE conference, or at least got this email if you weren't, I really liked this presentation, and I would just recommend going and listening to his words of wisdom. I thought they were wise and sound. I'm going to just pass on there. And then these are some of the things that I've been focusing on. It's a very messy look right now, but that's okay. This time of year is often messy. So you'll see that I'm looking at my master schedule, which is here. There's our WASC action plan. We've been in a WASC self-study this year. I'm planning for our graduation. I'm really, really focused on AB 540, SB 68 work. And, just supporting students. This is what I love. And so, that's part of our Finish Strong. And then just touching briefly on, what do you need to do to take care of yourself in what's been a really tough last week, and additionally really tough last couple of years. And I mean it when I say be unapologetic in the approach that you take for self-care. What brings you peace? What brings you laughter? What brings you joy? Is it having a picture of your kids up that you can look at all the time? I was laughing with Charisse the other day. Here's my my AirPods. I got my 90s beats going all the time. And so when I need an extra bump, these are in. And people think that's silly. I don't care. It makes me feel good, and it helps me finish strong. It helps me get through some tough days. So let's see how much time we have. I would just love to see in the chat anybody's, what do you do to help yourself feel better when things are tough? Do you have a walk-up song? Do you have do you cook? Do you do yoga? Are you a hiker? Are you in nature? What do you do when things get tough? Nice. 80s music. Thanks, Steve. Music, hiking and camping. Some people cook, some people bake bread. I was doing a lot of that too, a couple of years ago or a year ago. So if you don't have something that you can easily list, you need to make sure you find one, because that helps you get through, just tough times. Thank you, praying, music, friends, yes. Oil diffuser, yes, I love that. Yeah. Home improvement projects, that's amazing. So that's great. Gardening, I can relate to that. So that is wonderful. So that makes me feel really good that you guys, that you're thinking about some of those things too. We need that. Usha, I like that. Take a few moments to center myself before I leave for the day. Yes, that is important. I will say that, Usha, I do that too. I usually walk almost every day. I'm not walking for exercise. I'm walking for, a mind just clearing, I guess, before heading into work. And Julietta, yes, shopping. Who doesn't like stress shopping or shopping in general? So I can relate to that. So I'm going to move us on. Sorry, every time I think I'm going to move us on there. There we go. So again, we've seen these variations of this sign, but this is a tough time of year. We have to remember to breathe. We have to remember that we can't be perfect. We can't do it all. And what we're going to do is going to be good enough. And that's kind of it. So thank you for, letting me present today and be part of this.
Thank you, Jamie, so much. There are many things that are benefits of finishing strong, as Jamie shared. One of them is making sure that we finish strong for ourselves. And I appreciate your wrapping us up with some reminders of that too. We're going to turn it now to Steve Curiel, who is going to help us think about, okay, so we finished strong this year, and now we have to start thinking about next year and the fall coming and how we can start stronger. So Steve, I will turn it over to you.
Everyone, get my screen going here. I gotta figure out which one's the one presenting. Is that it? Everyone got that? We good?
We are good. Okay. We see it in presentation mode though.
Oh, that was
or
one thing.
In your mode.
I practiced earlier and let me switch. There we go. Better?
Still the same.
What? All right, let's see here. Let me try this again. I'm just going to start from the fresh. And this. Okay, there now. All right, cool. I tried it a little bit different and messed it up. So hi everyone. Happy to present, and I did want to piggyback on the comments about having someone to call. And I was looking at someone I know, and one of my favorite persons. I think that's crucial. Jamie, thanks for bringing that up. That you have someone out there in adult ed world that knows what you're going through, can talk adult ed, and just not to put a sad point to it, but Rocky Better was one of my guys to go to, and just like you said, someone that would pick up the call, pick up the phone and respond and talk about whatever issues. And so I definitely encourage you. And I met Rocky through ACSA. And so I want to not necessarily to make it public, but just ACSA, but ACSA CCA. I hope you guys are all involved. And if you can, if you're allowed to, feel safe to get out to the conferences. And that's where I think a lot of our friendships and the people that we rely on, that's how we meet them. That's where we meet them. And so just wanted to add that. But so I'm going to talk a little bit about building stronger, and definitely looking at the beginning of the school as your big workout opportunity to come in and do something great with your staff. And so I'm gonna that's my focus here. Jamie had also was very perspective and perceptive in saying and recognizing that right now is the best time to be talking about this, and it's also the hardest time to be talking about this. So we recognize that. But the fact you're in this meeting tells me you're on the right path and getting ready for that stronger start for the school year. So a little bit about my school. Yes, I'm a little bit bigger. And even at 7,000 this year, I think we're going to hit 5,000. I always use the 7,000. I don't like to go below that because I put the asterisk with COVID on it. But I still consider myself a relatively small school compared to folks like LAUSD, Hacienda La Puente. So it's all relative. But yeah, we're probably going to hit 5,000 students, it looks like this year, down 2,000 due to COVID, but we'll get back up there. We're climbing. We have 4 main campuses, so it makes it a little bit challenging to get our staff together, to do staff development, and to keep everyone on the same page for coordination. So, but that's what we do. We like to say we go where the students are, and we have about 60 teachers now. I'll say about 20 of them are community ed teachers, and they're very lightly associated. They don't attend professional development like the rest of the teachers. That's something we're working on, trying to create a separate PD plan for them. So we got about 40 teachers that we would consider CAPE adult ed, WIOA adult ed teachers, 30 support staff. And that's a pretty high ratio when you think most of your sites probably don't have that high ratio of support staff, which I include the administrators in that. But because we have 4 campuses, it kind of requires staffing at each site. So we're a little heavy on support staff side. And so again, that's something that impacts our meetings and our professional development and how we start the school year. And then serving 4 cities in Northwest Orange County. You hear Huntington Beach. What could Huntington Beach be doing in adult ed? Why do they have so many students? Well, we also serve Westminster, Fountain Valley, Costa Mesa, which have large pockets of non-English speakers and folks still wanting to get their high school diploma or GED. And Huntington Beach, for that matter, also has a good population there. So that's our school there. So I'm going to talk about staff morale. You can't start a meeting, especially start a school year, taking that into account and looking at tone and what you want to accomplish in that area. Also about looking at time and environment, those things that are under your control, in many ways more so than a high school or elementary school. And also before you start, some things to consider, and then we'll talk about one of those things that we all have to do, some of the have-tos that I'll share with in a minute. So staff morale. So if you guys have heard of Peter Drucker, he's a famous consultant for companies, wrote a number of books, and he actually was a professor, I believe, and had a lot of good books on strategy. And one of the things that stood out for me is this quote from him: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." And I'm a big strategy guy. I have to remind myself of this quote often, that where I feel comfortable is in the data and goals and setting timelines and things of that nature. But ultimately, it's the culture that's going to get your goals and your strategies accomplished, the culture of your school. And so that I'm going to think, I've always thought about having t-shirts created for my admin team and my leadership team to keep us all aware of that and not forget that. So with that in mind, staff morale is a huge issue, especially now considering what we've been going through. One of the things that I have noticed, and you probably noticed with your staff, is the disconnectedness due to COVID and due to even the mass that it tends to create. And that we've had some feedback on that. And so we're trying to get staff back together, trying to do more activities. We used to do fun social events probably once a month. We haven't had one in a while. We've been able to get together maybe twice in the last 2 years. And so that's something that's been noticed. And so that, that impacts your staff morale. And then also, what are challenges in the workforce system that in your own environment, maybe communications, and we have some issues with facilities. And so what are those big things that are impacting your staff that are not necessarily good? And what are the things that you can maybe highlight, like Jamie was pointing out, what are the good things out there? What's find the good in what we're dealing with? How do you know how they're feeling? So what feedback, what mechanisms do you have that will tell you what your staff is experiencing and what we do in our situation. I go to some folks. I have some key folks that I think have a good pulse on classified staff, a good pulse on ESL and CT. But then we also survey staff at the beginning of the year about every other year. And we will ask them those questions. How do you feel? How do you feel leadership is doing? Do you feel supported? Do you feel you have the right resources? Do you feel you have the ability to grow here? So we ask a lot of morale and culture type questions so we can get that feedback from them. And we can use it, and not just doesn't sit there. We use that in our planning and our strategic planning and the events and activities that we work on throughout the year. And who are your woos? Those that are winning others over, and those are your people that they go in any room and they're going to have a conversation with anybody. They light up the room. They're always cheering people up, and they are your kind of cheerleaders on your campus. I'm not one of those. That's not my natural tendency. But I know who on my staff are, and I go to them when we start talking about events, meetings and such. I try to leverage them. What do you think? What would you want to do? And try to bring some of their natural, call it funness, into those meetings and help us to not have what some would call a boring, stale meeting, but some fun and activities. And I don't even need to go to them now. The minute they know there's a meeting, and if I haven't reached out to them, they're calling me. What are we doing? What are we doing to engage staff and not make it boring? So also in considering your staff, you gotta talk about yourself. You got to think about yourself. Jamie pointed out her slide, so you definitely need to be practicing self-care. Who's telling you? You might think you're fine, but somebody else at home or your secretary or a close friend at work, are you getting feedback? Are they asking, if they're asking you, hey, something wrong, you all right? Probably is a sign you need to take a breather and consider and reflect on how you're doing. So time is one of those things that I leverage as much as possible for my school. And one of the things that I use time for is to build trust, to provide activities for staff, to be interacting, to not just be in a meeting discussing a strategy or data, looking at data, but activities that are going to bring them together and have some conversations. How's your program doing? How are you doing? And that takes time. And so in adult ed, one of the things that we all know is typically we're the forgotten school, the redheaded stepchild. People hate hearing that, but people don't really pay attention to what we're doing. Obviously, those are challenges when we want to get things done and we need the support of the district. But at the same time, when they don't know what you're doing, they don't know what you're doing. And so we plan out, instead of just 2 days of PD that our whole district goes through, and typically it's only half days at each of the sites, we do 3 to 4 days where 2 of them are mine and then 2 of them are the departments for them to have meetings and have activities and professional development. And it costs money. Yeah, and we pay the teachers for those meetings. We pay classified staff's already on board. They're in paid status. But we want to build that time, and that kind of alleviates a lot of our restraints that you typically will find in a typical PD, a day event. You just can't fit everything in a day. And even oftentimes in 2 days, and you really think about all the things we're doing. Jamie had a great picture. I think she went a little too fast on them. I don't think she covered it, but had a chart, like a diagram of all the things that we have to do as a school, and it's a ton. And so it takes time to get to those things. And so take advantage of your school's calendar. Most cases, I think, I'll put it out there, most schools have control of their calendar. Like I said, the district's not telling you can't do it, or even if they're saying, yeah, you can't do that, ask them why. It's your funding. As far as adult ed, it's CAPE funding. It is WIOA funding, whatever other fund sources you have. And I always push, well, I haven't had to push back. I've only had to answer this once, maybe twice. But when they ask that question, why do you need all these days? I point out all the PD that the district provides is almost useless to my staff and what we do in adult ed. Once I say that, I ask them, tell me which of those PDs have anything to do with adult learning, andragogy, WIOA, CAPE, and I get no response. And then they say, fine, go ahead and have your meetings. So definitely take advantage of the calendar. And I think in most cases, you'll be surprised how much control you have over it. Oh, one thing I did want to, I had on the last one slide, free your own calendar. Make sure you're not scheduling meetings or being scheduled for meetings as much as you can. Try to get out of those meetings, wipe your calendar, because that's your time to interact with staff, to be around, joining meetings. You don't have to lead every meeting. Definitely leverage some folks to do stuff, but you should be involved. I think it's important for leaders, administrators to be interacting, meeting, especially with new staff, meeting them. So try to free your calendar so you're not being torn and running to other meetings. Environment. I love this picture. And no, we do not go to water parks and have our meetings, although we've been close. Location. When you're looking for a house and you're looking for where you're going to settle down, whether it's with your family or just by yourself with your dog, you're looking for something that's going to give you that's going to feel good, that's going to provide a relaxing atmosphere, that maybe has some activities close by. So when we do our events, we try to think outside of our multi-purpose room here on campus, even though that's easiest to set up and control. So we look for outside venues. We've had meetings at Microsoft, our local Microsoft vendor. They have a big training room. We asked if we can use it. They were happy to host us. We've had meetings at local Dave and Buster's type locations. They rent us out a room. They get us a deal. Staff, we had part of the day in meetings, and then the other part was team building, we called it. And they went out and enjoyed, had some fun time as departments, as groups. So we've done it at parks. We all meet at a park and we have our meetings. And so think outside your school campus, and it really changes the dynamics. It does change the energy of your staff when they come into a new environment. Also, don't forget about food. I'm reminded constantly, or I've asked constantly, what do we have for food? What's for lunch? Assuming your budget can afford it. And most of the budgets in California adult schools, I've seen most of the schools have money to do this. Because I'm, as you know, I've been involved with CCA and dealing with the carryover issue. So food, coffee is a must, but definitely try to always provide food, even if it's little snacks. If you can get an open PO at a Smart and Final and just pick up little candies or little bags of peanuts and so forth, but try to have food at your events. To impact that environment and keep it lively, keep them awake. And so seating arrangements, make sure if you're planning to do a lot of group interaction, don't use stadium seating. Make sure you provide the seating that supports whatever you want to accomplish in those meetings and the types of interactions you want to have. And after saying all that, try to keep it simple. I have some folks that are very much into the details and get excited. They want to do a lot of things. Try to, as a principal, I try to look at what's doable and what's comfortable. And we can do just about everything, but if we're going to be running around stressed out about things, and if my staff, my leadership team is going to be stressed out, then I know I need to back off, and they need to be a part of that, enjoying the meeting. They need to be able to talk with other folks. So we we cut back typically to not add too much into any one day, any one meeting for our back to school meetings. So with that, a 5-minute chat, which I should be actually, let's do 2 minutes if we can do that, if that's even worth it. But let's do 2 minutes. What are some ways you can leverage time and environment? And so talk with your, I think we're going to break up into groups of 4 from the likes of it, 4 or 5, and just share maybe some ideas you're thinking right now that you might take advantage. Maybe 1 or 2 people share. So am I going to do those breaks?
Grace is going to put you into breakout rooms now to chat a little bit about ways you can leverage time and environment for your back to school to start the year stronger. So Grace, whenever you're ready.
Sure, one moment. I'm just putting the question in the chat so everyone can see it.
Oh, I should have sent you that. Yeah.
All right, there we go. Did you agree that 5 minutes still or 2?
2 minutes, 2 minutes.
2 minutes. All right, very nice. So I'll give you guys the 1 minute warning when needed, but here we go. Breakout rooms.
All right, so we'll keep going. Hopefully you had some good ideas you can share and I'll be able to follow up on for soon, a meeting soon. And so before you start your meeting and you start planning for the meeting, once you got location, environment all figured out, you want to make sure, and Janie had talked about this, that you're looking at the why. And she referenced a video. CC had that video that we were able to see, and it's a great video. Another recommendation is Simon Sinek, who had a book you might have heard about, Start with Why. There are only two ways to influence human behavior. You can manipulate it or you can inspire it. And obviously, I think as leaders, we want to inspire that. And so getting back to those core values, why do we do what we do? We've had some value statements that we developed a few years ago, but
Steve,
it always,
if you are sharing your screen, it's not up.
that's why I hit the escape and it stopped doing that. There we go. Better?
Better, thank you.
Again, Start with Why. I highly recommend the book. You should, that brings people back to the core. And it actually, when you're planning, if you start with why, it's going to help you decide what's most important that you're going to cover. And then kind of setting your staff around that. So highly encourage that book. There's a video link there that I know Sharice, I think we're going to send out this PowerPoint. It's a good watch. It's something you might share with your staff that helps them understand the importance of knowing your why. So then we get to the have-tos, and I'm going to fully admit, Sharice challenged me on this. I just had this as a slide about you need to know your goals. The strategy and goals you pointed out, that's more of like, that's not really a why, that's more of a have-to. And so she was right. And so I changed this slide, and I appreciate that, Sharice. Always keep me honest. But it is, when I started looking at it, when she pointed that out, I read it like, you're right. This is the stuff that most staff, let's admit it, do not want to have to deal with. But we know we have to go over it because it's part of our planning, it's part of our accountability. And so when you get into the mode of now we're going to have the real meeting, we'll say we're going to talk about this stuff, they have to. So you have your strategic goals centered around CAPE requirements, whatever you've written in your CAPE plan. You've got your WASC plan, you got your CIP, and you got district LCAP if it mentions you or other prerogatives your district might have. That's a lot of, you have to do these things, we have to do these things. And so just take that lightly for those meetings, for that first meeting, especially when you go back to morale and staff engagement and the experience you want them to have in that meeting. So one of the first things is these are all important to me. This is what the world I live in, and this is where I'm constantly looking at my adult school from the metrics or the goals, the strategies that we have developed. My staff doesn't think that way, most of them. Maybe my administrators, my assistant principals do, but not most of them are just wanting to teach, and they want to help their students, and we have to help them understand how that fits in to the plan and really the goals and strategy. That's all about how we're going to support them. These are our goals, and we're going to support you in reaching these goals. So it they don't need to get in the weeds on these. And so make them easy to remember. I like using a word art or Canva to kind of put them into a nice display, and really more at the leadership level is where you can get into detail where people are going to be more comfortable with them. Focus on meaning and relevance rather than the detail. Why is it important? Why are transitions important for my students? Why are we focusing on that? And so you want to talk about the why again, and what we want to do for our students, and what we want our students to be able to do as a result of coming to our schools. And try to minimize them by aligning them. Sometimes many of the goals or even the outcomes are the same for CAPE, WIOA, CIP. And there was actually some state level coordination and intentionality around making them similar, if not the same. So look to try to reduce them and try to put them into a minimal list of here are our goals or our outcomes, and then that's what you present to your staff. So again, these are have-tos. I would not focus a big part of your meeting on these type of things unless you're in a WASC year, unless there's something else really important you got to get through. But maybe at most focus on one area. And if you want to take a deep dive into that area, like this next year, we're going to be one of our WASC action items is a review of the curriculum on a regular basis, because some of our curriculum can just be there out there in our classes, and we don't look at it for a few years. And so this year we're going through a review, and we're going to focus on relevance and rigor for that curriculum, and what does that mean. And that's as far as we will go on that one topic for this meeting. So the other have-tos, and these are the ones that sometimes I accidentally forget to cover in my meeting, but I'm reminded I'm supposed to, as administrator, mention them. You got your mandated notices that you have to go over, and the sexual harassment, tobacco, all those federally required notices that we have to review. I typically send those out in an email, and maybe I've done it where I've attached a video to review them, and assumed everybody watched it. I'm sure they wait for it every fall to get those notices. Or we made games out of them. We try to do a word hunt for, look through the documents and see if you can find that word hunt, and try to get them out of the way. Try not to start with, that's a total contradiction. Present them early, don't start with them. So, I know what I'm saying. I'm trying to say is get them out before your meeting in an email, and just, as much as you can, just keep it light on that, and then move on to your meeting. And so those are, again, your have-tos. And don't forget to have fun. This is the one, again, I rely on my woos. They tell me, hey, let's do these activities. They give me ideas. Google has a lot of team building activities, icebreakers. Again, leverage the environment. If you're at a park, I was just talking with a group, and they were considering the park idea, and they were going to do some activities, some events type things at the park while they're there. Save some of the time for that. So that's awesome. And then remember, you got supplies, a ton of supplies, pens, cards, index cards, and so forth, that you can use and to try to create some activities. Or you can contract out, get a venue if your district will allow it, get a venue that has some built-in team building activities. All the big leadership people, your superintendents, most of them have gone through retreats where they have the jungle maze or whatever. And so that concept is not something that's foreign. So if you have a local place that can provide some team building activities, I would definitely look into that. Culture strategy for breakfast. Again, staff morale, bring it back to where's your staff, what do they need, and how can you improve on that so that they can start the year stronger than they finished. And I won't do this because I think we want to leave some time for questions. So some ideas how you would start strong, but at this point, opening it up for any questions you might have. Or Sharice, is that okay?
That is
Rainy,
perfect. We have about 1 minute. So well, I want to thank you and Jamie for the presentations today. I know this is a lot of content to share in a limited amount of time, but we wanted to give you ways in which you can think about finishing strong, and ways you can think about coming into next year, and ideas for planning and preparing for that. So with that, this is the last of our webinar series for this year. If you do have questions, we're a small group, and we are happy to open it up for you to unmute, and we can probably take maybe 1 or 2 questions if there are any. And if there aren't, then we will say thank you for joining us. But if you have a question, please unmute. And
hi, Victoria, I saw you snuck in.
Yes, I'm sorry I missed the first part, but I caught all the highlights. Thank you. And I know it's recorded, so I'll listen to you, Jamie. Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any hands raised or folks coming off mute, so I'll say it's good to see everyone. And some of you I will see next week. I'm looking forward to that. And others of you, I wish you a wonderful rest of this week and a great summer if you are taking some time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Everyone.